Well, good morning and welcome here in London and also out in deepest Surrey, where Jeff Llewellyn, the president of the British Measurement and Testing Association, is going to give us a presentation on something I think is starting to worry many of us. We've spoken quite a bit about the gaps on the shelves in the United Kingdom, but what has that got to do with UKCA marking? And you're going to learn over the next 25 minutes, I think, some interesting things about the world of accreditation, certification, testing, and measurement, and how it matters to us and our lives. Now, you'll know me, I'm Michael Mainelli, I'm one of the directors of XEN, and it really is a privilege to be able to introduce so many of these webinars, which range widely and freely across technology, economics, and finance. And I can only do so thanks to the tolerance of our sponsors who let us follow our nose on the topics that might be of interest to our community. And I think this one is going to start at the base, looking a lot like a technological trade aspect, and then we'll see it move up into potentially political and certainly maybe even geopolitical terms. But I'll leave that to Jeff. For the moment, just a few words of housekeeping. Firstly, my job is to get out of the way as quickly as possible and let you hear from our expert. Secondly, I would like to point out that the slides are up and available, and there will be links posted on the website to Jeff and the BMTA. Thirdly, the webinar itself has got a lot of Q&A facilities, so we're going to have 20 minutes for questions and answer. Please use the GoToWebinar question and answer facility, though. I'm here with you, so I won't be able to feed in emails or texts or signal messages or whatever it is that you desire. Please use the GoToWebinar facility. If you've got something specific or you'd like to contact Jeff directly, just plug it into the Q&A, because Jeff will be getting all of the questions and answers, all the questions that you send in with your email attached, so he can respond directly over the next day or so if you would like that. And finally, yes, it is being recorded, and the recording will be up in approximately 2 working days, i.e. over the weekend, and available on Monday morning for sure. So I'd like to say, with no more ado, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody. Gaps on shelves, looming threats to markets and supply chains. That's all a bit alarmist and dramatic, isn't it? All coming from a simple change of a label on a product. Let me explain. Can I have the first slide, please? But first of all, I'd like to just understand what you understand about the CE mark. Is it a product safety marking? Is it a mark to show that the product conforms with European standards? Or is it a mark showing that the product was made in Europe? If you could vote now, please.
Well, the audience is very opinionated, Jeff, which is what we love about our community here. Over 70% have voted. We'll leave it open just a few more seconds, well over 80 now. Great, and I think we'll just close that now and present the results. So,
oh, that's excellent. You are indeed a well-informed audience. Can I have the next slide, please? Right, next. There you are. Yes, you've all got it. The correct answer is B. The CE mark stands for Conformity Européenne, and it shows that the product conforms with the requirements of the relevant harmonized European standards for product performance and safety. It's not the safety mark as such, and it's applied to products made anywhere in the world which are sold in Europe. It also shows when and where the product was made, who made it, and what standards it complies with, and who tested it. Not all of that information is necessarily on the label. Different directives have different requirements, but it should all be on, at least on a piece of accompanying paper which is with the product. Next slide, please. So how does it all work? Well, there are 23 different European directives which require the CE mark on products, and this covers an extremely wide range of products, and these are all sold throughout the EU. For example, virtually all white goods, washing machines, dishwashers, fridges, freezers, virtually all electronic and electric goods, phones, radios, computers, laptops, tablets, TVs, etc. Construction products, of which there's a huge range, lifts, pressure vessels, garden machinery, fireworks, toys, boats, beer glasses, and even petrol pumps. Every individual item must be labelled with a CE mark before it can be sold in Europe. Next. Now, these are some examples of things that I found in my own home in about 5 minutes, just showing how far the mark has penetrated to our everyday lives. On the left, there's a laptop computer. On the right, a rechargeable torch. Next. A pair of garden gloves. These are classified as personal protective equipment, PPE. You can see it bears a CE mark. You can see the standards to which it's been tested and the manufacturer. Next. On the left, eardrops, CE labelled under the Medicines Directive. And on the right, an ink cartridge for a printer. The cartridge itself is not labelled, but the packaging is down at the bottom right corner. Next, toys. All these are labelled under the Toys Directive. The triangular jigsaw, the other pop-up toy, and the construction toy all fall under the Toys Directive. Next, and a rather well-used garden strimmer. The strimmer had the label actually on the strimmer itself, and also on the battery charger. It's a battery strimmer. Interestingly, the battery doesn't have a label at all, but that would be included with the charging unit, and that's labelled under a number of directives. One of which is the noise emissions from into the environment for outdoor equipment. Okay, so those are just common items from my home. Now, can you help me again, please? It'd be very helpful to me if I can know from which sector you're from. So are you a manufacturer or importer, a distributor or retailer, from financial services, from a testing laboratory or similar organisation, or something else altogether? Can you vote now, please?
Well, I was very proud of our community getting the last one right, and this one is an easy one. So we're just going to close that poll and let you see those results, Jeff. So as you'd expect, a third in financial services, a third from testing, etc., and a third from other. So it's a diverse audience out here, but not many manufacturers or importers or distributors.
Okay. Well, for those of you, particularly from testing labs, apologies if you know all this already, but for the benefit of the others, I will explain something about the mysteries of the CE mark. How does it work? What is it? Well, a manufacturer or importer wishing to put a new product onto the European market will send that product to be tested to an accrediting tested laboratory on the EU approved list, and they are called, in EU speak, notified bodies, and they will send them there for testing to the standards which are specified under the relevant directive. The testing laboratory or notified body then undertakes the tests which are required by the directive, and if the product meets the standards, the lab issues a certificate of conformity. The manufacturer shows the certificate to the competent authority, which in the UK is mostly a government department, and the competent authority then permits the manufacturer or importer to label each and every item of product with the CE mark. Now, this is a hugely simplified version of the process. There are a number of different variants of this, but most of them involve an element of testing at some stage or other. But I won't go into the whole lot, else we'd be here literally all afternoon describing them. So can I have the next slide, please? So what's all changing then? Well, the important thing is that from the 1st of January 2023, the CE mark will no longer be applied in the UK. It's going to be replaced by the UK Conformity Assessment mark, the UKCA mark, which is, you can see on the right, is quite a striking, distinctive mark. And all products put onto the UK market after the 1st of January 2023, which were formerly CE marked, will have to be UKCA marked. Can I have the next slide, please? From the 1st of January this year, all of the UK notified bodies, test labs, became UK approved body. It just moved over lock, stock and barrel. And their accreditation was continued, just transferred, so no change there. But the big change was that UK approved bodies cannot operate in the EU. They are just not recognised in the EU. So at a stroke, all the UK labs lost their European business, which was significant. The UK had more than its fair share of the conformity assessment work prior to Brexit. I've got a figure of about a £2 billion a year industry, but don't hold me to that. That figure I think came from the government in the first place. But a lot of that has just gone. Now, from the 1st of January 2021 until the 31st of December 2022, new products coming onto the UK market can be either UKCA marked, CE marked, or both. So there is a year's grace. And from the 1st of January 2021, UK manufacturers, importers wishing to place a product on the EU market must have that product tested by an EU notified body, not by a UK lab, because they're not recognised. I hope you're all keeping up at the back there, but can I have the next slide, please? Right. From the 1st of January 21 until the end of next year, 31st of December, manufacturers or importers seeking to place a new product on both the EU and UK market need only to have it CE marked. But they can choose to have it dual marked with both the UKCA mark and the CE mark, but just the CE marking will still be valid for next year. Then, from the 1st of January 2023, manufacturers or importers seeking to place a new product on both the UK and EU markets will have to have the product tested by both an EU notified body and a UK approved body. The tests will actually be identical because the standards that are being tested are identical. But there is no mutual recognition of test results. And that means that the product will have to be labelled with the UKCA mark and the CE mark, and there will have to be dual testing. So, next slide, please. So what actually is the problem then? Well, from the 1st of January 2023, UK approved bodies will test products for compliance with British standards, not European ones. But for the most part, they are international standards anyway, and absolutely identical to the European standards. But that may not be the case in the future. The standards may diverge, and that would significantly increase the cost of dual testing and marking, particularly the testing, because you would have to have two different sets of tests. There are at the moment 148 UK approved bodies, test labs, on the government list. And it's, as I said earlier, it's just been lifted straight from the EU list of notified bodies. Unfortunately, both it and the EU list are out of date. And not all of the approved bodies now actually offer a service. And that's been the case for a little while. Next slide. The other problem is that the coverage of approved bodies across the 23 regulatory areas corresponding to the 23 directives is very uneven. Construction products, for example, are very well served with 39 approved bodies. For pyrotechnics or fireworks and cableways, ski lifts, cable cars, funicular railways, etc., those sort of things, aerial rides in theme parks, there are none at all. Well, actually, that's wrong. Since doing this slide, they announced there is now an AB for pyrotechnics for fireworks, but it's in Hungary. It's not a UK based laboratory at all. It's an EU notified body which has been permitted to test for the UK mark. That probably doesn't matter that much, but because fireworks testing is a small and specialized market, and there's not a huge demand for it, and there never has been a capability in the UK anyway. But there we are. That is in fact a European notified body testing for the UKCA mark, a fact which has not gone down well with UK labs, as you can imagine. For recreational crafts and boats, that is, there's one. That actually doesn't require testing by laboratories. I understand it is actually mainly a documentation and inspection process. But there are an awful lot of new boats, power and sail, which come onto the market every year. And there are doubts whether the one notified body can actually cope with the demand. For noise from outdoor equipment, such as strimmers, lawnmowers, hedge trimmers, chainsaws, that sort of thing, there are actually 3 notified bodies, 2 reasonably large and 1 specialized one. But again, the problem here is really one of a lack of capacity because of the large number of different models and variants of these products that come onto the market every year. Of course, a lot of them were actually tested in Europe, as were the recreational craft, but now they will all have to be tested by UK lab, and there are concerns about the capacity to do that. Even for construction products, which cover a tremendously wide range of products, there is no or very limited capability for testing some products. Of the 39 approved bodies, not all of them do everything, so there are gaps and limited capabilities. So, for example, thermostatic radiator valves, where the trade association for those is actually very concerned that the one approved body that is listed won't be able to cope with the volume in coming years. So can I have the next slide, please? The UKCA marking is actually, it says very similar, it's actually almost identical to the CE marking process at the moment. But as I've just mentioned, the UK approved bodies are both capability and capacity limited. And they, in some cases, will not be able to offer a testing service for some products. And linked to that, the UK market for some products may be too small for an approved body to set up a new viable service. And the reason for this actually is that it's not easy to set up a new service. It's in fact very capital intensive. If you're setting up a new service, first of all, you have to buy the kit to do it. Then you have to set the kit up and get it running. Then you have to make sure you've got people who are trained and skilled enough to use it. Once you've got all those in place, the kit itself has to go through a lengthy process of calibration, validation, verification, and it has to be accredited by the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, UKCA, in the UK. And having done all that, it has to then be approved by the competent authority, all of which takes time and costs a lot of money. Now, a laboratory wishing to set that up will want to see a reasonable return on investment, and that will depend on, of course, the demand for services. And if that demand isn't there, the laboratories are going to be very reluctant to set up a service. So the end point of that is that manufacturers of some products will find it very difficult to get products a UKCA marked, and may choose to abandon the UK market because if they can't get them UKCA marked, they can't put them on the market. That will be the situation post January 23. Next slide, please. Furthermore, the labelling process itself takes time. It's just not a case of printing off a UKCA mark and sticking it on top of the CE mark. The manufacturers themselves have got to, once they've got the necessary approvals, have got to gear up to relabeling their products. I mean, some products it's actually printed on, others it's etched on in other ways. There is a bit of relief in that for the first year, at least manufacturers will be allowed to print the UKCA mark on a piece of paper and attach it to the actual product. But in each case, the manufacturers will need to build up stocks of labeled products before they can actually get them to their distributors, and all that will take time. After in 2024, they'll have no option. The label will have to be printed or attached firmly to the product. It won't be on a separate piece of paper. Now, BMTA estimates from the intelligence we gather that things are likely to come to a head next autumn, and that's because manufacturers and importers have been holding off for the time being getting their products UKCA marked. But any stocks of CE mark product, which they've been producing, which have not been sent to distributors, and that means, you know, it's not got to the distributors' warehouses. Like, let's take an example for B&Q. If a manufacturer, say of radiator valves, hasn't got their product to B&Q's warehouses, it will not, by the 31st of December, it will not be deemed to be on the market. And then that too will also need to be UKCA marked. So if a manufacturer has a large stock of CE marked product in its warehouse, it could find it needs to UKCA mark that as well, which all takes time. And we predict that this is going to cause a bow wave effect, you know, with large volumes of product needing to be tested in the autumn, between the autumn and January, and some approved bodies will just simply not have the capacity to cope. So that will create a testing backlog and a disruption to supplies. Next slide, please. So that's the doom and gloom scenario. So what's to be done to prevent all this? Well, manufacturers and importers should start the UKCA marking process now. Remember, they're allowed to do it this year, and follow the guidance on the gov.uk website. It's not the most easy read. In fact, it's quite tedious, but all you need to know is there. It's good stuff. And Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Department, BEIS, are putting out some very helpful webinars to guide manufacturers and importers through the process. So the message very firmly coming from government is start now, don't leave it any later. Alternatively, what you could do, a manufacturer or importer could build up large stocks of CE marked products. Remember, they've got all of 2022 to do it. But the key thing is to get them out to their distributors by the 31st of December next year. And that would, if they've got big enough stocks, that should smooth out the bow wave coming through at the start of 2023. And lastly, the government needs to encourage approved bodies to expand their capabilities and capacity to fill the gaps. So next slide, please. You would think that the laboratories would jump at the chance of expanding their business, because there's all these big opportunities coming forward, which the government keeps telling them about. But for the reason that I've mentioned before, namely the high capital costs involved, and the uncertainty in the markets, they are very reluctant to do so. So what could the government do? Well, it is, in fact, has done the first one already. It's eased the regulations, and it's permitted an overseas laboratory, namely the Hungarian lab, to test for pyrotechnics. Now that's a very pragmatic solution, and with pyrotechnics, as I said before, it's been not really that much of an issue. But it is an issue if it becomes or if it sets a precedent, and it's a line which BMTA is and its members are strongly opposed to. Because looking at the AB's, the testing lab's position, they've lost all of their European business, which, as I mentioned before, was significant. And now they're faced with having European notified bodies let loose in the UK market, whilst they are not allowed into the European market. So although that is a logical step for the government to take, in the testing lab community, it is extremely unpopular. Now, what else could they do? Well, the government could let contracts to laboratories to provide a service which at least covered their setup costs and the initial capital. They've done this in setting up the Lighthouse laboratories for PCR testing with remarkable success, and also at huge cost. For a fraction of that cost, they could set up or help the UK testing laboratory services. Or they could provide financial incentives to approved bodies to set up new services by means of grants, low interest loans, tax breaks and investments. I'm sure those of you in the financial services sector will be able to come up with much more efficient ways and better ways of doing things. But they could give some financial help to get labs set up and running. They could also set up a government testing laboratory or a testing service. I mean, now this is very much not the flavour of the month today, but there are precedents from the 1960s and 70s. There used to be a lot of government labs testing things. In fact, I've worked in 3 of them over the course of my career. And there is, at least in theory, an option for government to set up its own testing service to fill the gaps. Or finally, it could expand the capability of the Office of Product and Safety Standards, OPS&S, which does have its own fairly modest testing laboratory capacity at the moment. In fact, it's the old National Weights and Measures Laboratory, of which I was the chief executive many years ago. But there is that option in theory for them to do so. So can I move to the final slide, please? One thing is certain. If nothing is done about the gaps in testing capacity and capability in the UK, there will be gaps on shelves in 2023. I'm fairly confident in saying that. Now, is that a Brexit bonus? Well, I think gaps on shelves are going to be a Brexit consequence. But for those UK labs which are able to deliver a testing and approval service, there could well be a Brexit bonus. So I think it depends basically whether you're a manufacturer or a testing lab on the answer to that question. Thank you very much.
Jeff, that's super. A lovely exposition of a little bit of a pickle here. I've got a couple of comments here. Trevor Thompson made a point very early on, just he'd rather say the manufacturer is the one who claims compliance. Doug Flores points out that asks us to note that the UK government list of designated standards lists EN standards, not British standards, BS standards. So some good points there. And I want to start off with one. Could a UK approved body also be an EU notified body if it's not located in the EU, or is there some technicality there?
If the body is not located in the EU, and it cannot be, excuse me, it cannot be an EU notified body. They must have a physical presence in the EU and must be a legal entity in the EU. What has happened with some of the large global companies of our members is that they've actually set up shop in the EU. They've set up their laboratory there, which is then registered as a EU notified body. It has to be accredited by an EU accreditation body, and they've transferred their British business there, so that they, in theory at least, they can handle inquiries from importers in the UK by sending it across the channel to their EU branches. But they are EU notified bodies. UK labs operating from the UK, based here, and legal entities here, cannot be EU notified bodies.
John O'Hara makes an interesting point. He congratulates you on your presentation, but let's explore the niggles. Is this an opportunity for Northern Ireland? Could you do a double approved body, notified body from Northern Ireland?
I have deliberately not said anything about Northern Ireland because it is very complicated. The UKCA mark in Northern Ireland is actually a UK NI mark, and it's entirely different to the UKCA mark. If a product which is put onto the market in Northern Ireland from Britain, it has to have both the CE mark and the UK NI mark. The UKCA mark actually itself is not recognised in Ireland. It's frankly, it's a bit of a nightmare for manufacturers, and it's all part of the Northern Ireland Protocol, and quite honestly, who knows where that's going. So yeah, so that's the reason why I haven't said anything about it. For this talk, it would just confuse the issue rather greatly.
Well, thank you, John, for that. Who also points out that UK and I, well, the market is probably too small to support that, really.
Yeah.
We've we've had a couple of things in this space already. I mean, the whole thing reeks firstly of protectionism, in the sense that if we're up for free trade, you do free trade regardless of what the other party does, and I'd just like to pursue that a bit. So we've got, you know, oh, and by the way, Danny Maxim makes a point that I just want to raise, Jeff. He says that the former NWML, which was now the OPSS accredited, they are ceasing certification services shortly, apparently. So so interesting point there. Anyway, on this, we've had a delay already. Is another solution though to just extend the validity of the CE in the UK again? So the government just says, fine, you know, we've got our UKCA mark, we recognize it, but we'll recognize the CE mark too.
Well, yes, I think the view from the testing lab community is that is you know, either kicking the can down the road or dancing around the nettle and not grasping it, determining which metaphor you prefer to use. At some point, it's going to be, you know, we'll have to come to terms with this. I mean, the sensible, and in my view, long-term solution is for this is to be there for there to be a mutual recognition agreement between the EU in the UK, and that was the position that BMTA was putting forward 4 years ago, and I think it actually was part of the UK negotiating position at the outset in the trade deal. But the EU has been very clear right from the outset. They said no, if we're not going to allow UK labs to operate in the EU. We won't recognise them, and you will be treated as though you are any other foreign country outside the EU. And they have been utterly consistent in that right throughout. So, in a sense, there's no surprise with this. This has been coming for about 3 years now, and we are where we are. But I'll go to what I said at the outset. I think the long-term thing is there to be a mutual recognition agreement, which is in everybody's interests, even the EU's rather than ours.
Well, Hugh Purser says, yeah, it is total madness. Renegotiate mutual recognition or equivalence as per financial services, but even that hasn't been rosy. But I do wonder personally if just the acceptance, because what's the benefit to the UK consumer of additional testing coming in if the standards are equivalent? So, from a cheapest consumer argument. Anyway, let's a good question here from Donald McCrae. How much is this a consequence of our hard Brexit? For example, what do Norway and Switzerland do?
Yeah, that is very difficult to answer, really. I think under any circumstance, the EU would have taken this sort of rather, I thought, theological position, if you like. I think there are people in the Commission, at least, who want to punish Britain, and they have seen this is actually quite a good way of doing it, because who are the losers in this game? Well, it's certainly not the EU, given that there's a much larger market there than the UK. What Norway and Switzerland do, to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I think that their testing bodies are actually recognised by the EU, but I wouldn't swear to that. But it's a very good to dig in. Yeah, they could be a model to follow. Yeah.
Trevor Thompson again. Quite serious, and I must say, when we've been looking at the whole PCR testing, I myself have seen abuses of the mark. I've even seen people slamming government logos onto their advertising, claiming effectively that they're the UK government. It's really been a bit of a minefield. But as we know, there's been very little formal pushback on the frauds, let alone the mislabeling. So Trevor Thompson's asking, Jeff, do you feel that there's really any significant likelihood of any significant penalty, at least in the short term, if a manufacturer just slaps on a mark, regardless of testing or not?
Well, of course, this is all thrown back onto trading standards departments in local authorities. They are the enforcers. and they are pretty busy as it is now, because over the years their resources have been steadily reduced for a number of reasons, and so now they are somewhat overstretched. So in answer to your question, I think the chances of getting significant action on this are not high. It remains to be seen, and what priority that the local authority trading standards departments accord to it.
We've got a little bit of input here from Hugh Purser. The European Union comprises 28 countries that require CE marking. 3 additional countries, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, although not officially part of the EU, are signatories to the EEA.
Yeah.
Switzerland is not an EU member nor a signatory to the EEA, but they have transposed the medical services directives into their national law, and they require CE marking. So, you know, kind of bow to it, really. Jane Goddard is curious on behalf of Airto, is it at all likely the government will offer incentives to increase testing capacity, or is mutual recognition really more realistic, Jeff?
Well, we would very much hope that the government offered financial incentives, at least to get us from A to B, sort of over the initial hump. The MRA, I think, is in the very long term the sensible thing, you know, the sensible way out of this. But that will require, I think, convincing people in the EU Commission that they want to do that. Hopefully, in time, they will, you know, come to see that it's mutually beneficial. But so that's basically how I see it now.
Okay. This next question requires me to point out to the audience that Jeff and I are fellow directors on the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, UKCA, as Jeff mentioned in the presentation. And this question is from Doug Florence. He points out that the UK Association of Approved Bodies for Machinery has devised guidelines for its members to share conformity assessments between notified and approved bodies in a way which is compliant with ISO 17065. Now, UKCA cannot formally approve this, but apparently we've said that we do not see any problems with it. This means only one set of tests and examinations needs to be done.
Yeah, the problem arises not so much where you've had a product which has been tested by a UK laboratory for CE marking and then will need UKCA marking in the future. As long as the UK lab has retained the certificates and documentation. The problem actually arises because from the 1st of January, all UK labs who tested products for the European market had to hand over the certificates and all the documentation to a European notified body to do that. So that's where the crunch comes. It's really looking at those products which were CE marked by a European body, which are going to have to come into the UK to be done by a UK body. When it's all been done in the UK, both before and after, I think the situation is slightly easier. And I was interested to hear about that. I'd like to know a little bit more about that arrangement.
Okay, good. Danny Maxim points out that trading standards is grossly under-resourced to deal with emerging or fraudulent certification marking. You know, a nationally coordinated resource strategy would need to be provided through OPSS. And Trevor Thompson kind of agrees in a way where he says they will concentrate on goods proven faulty, you know, rather than those that are wrongly labeled. So it does look as if we're opening up. Now, a couple of things I'd just like to pick on is how this, in some ways, actually interferes with existing government policies. You spoke about the radiator valves, but the government wants us to install all brand new heat pumps, which is going to increase the demand there. So it's not just empty shells, there's also programs that really can't be properly implemented, isn't it?
Well, there is a risk, but I mean the government sort of house domestic heating thing that comes in at about 2025, and this is an issue for 2023. So perhaps hopefully in the intervening time, it will have, you know, at least the labelling issue will have been sorted, and that any disruption to supplies will have been minimized. But Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility if anyone wants to get ahead of the game and put an air source heat pump in now, it's very possible they will have to modify their existing domestic heating systems anyway, and they could at least in theory find it difficult to get the appropriate parts for that.
Yeah. Good. Doug Flores has kindly offered, I'm just putting in the chat to everybody, he's offered to email a copy of the ABM guidance on shared and inherited conformity assessment if you send it to the email, and I'm just putting that into the chat room now. So there you go. A couple of other things. Jeff, one of your suggestions was to build up stock and get it into distributors' hands. And I can see that at the margins, but isn't that a horrific expense? So, most business people don't want to build up, unnecessary stock, tying up capital.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yes, I entirely accept that point, Michael. You're absolutely right, because stock sitting in warehouses is dead capital. But it is at least a theoretical way, if nothing else, of beating this problem. It's going to be a balance to be struck of which is going to cause the least disruption, really.
Right. Well, I'm going to end on a final question, which certainly has been crossing my mind, and again comes back to this government stuff, and it's from Greg Ward. Well, actually, let me just, a question's just popped in. If you can answer it very swiftly, it's also from Jane Goddard. Is this problem likely to stifle innovation if there's a backlog of existing products waiting to be tested?
I think yes, there is a risk. There is a risk there. I mean, one of the risks that we've also seen, sort of related to that, is that we've come to our notice that some product manufacturers are saying, oh, it's all just getting too difficult, it's costing too much, we're not going to bother with the UK market, we'll just supply the United States, China and Europe, yeah, but on the innovation point, I think there may be an initial risk, but I think in time things will settle down, and that will diminish. That would be my guess.
Well, I'm going to wrap up with this final comment and hand to you for your last remark. It's from Greg Ward. The new government initiative of made in the UK, sold to the world would look pretty foolish if it was actually made in the UK and marked in Brussels before it's allowed to be sold to the world. Any comments on that?
No, I think that's quite a good statement there. Quite a good view. Yeah.
Good note on which to end. Well, Jeff, I'll come back if I may. Just three quick rounds of thanks. First round of thanks is very much to our sponsors, as ever. I hope that they found this interesting. Certainly, Jeff, when you put this to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I think it was Hugh Purser, talking earlier about what a mess this is. Secondly, may I thank you, the audience. You've been extremely vibrant today. We do have a list here of forthcoming webinars, as ever. Simply clock into the website. That's the quickest way to do it. But as I say, this one will be going out over the weekend up on the same webpage that you registered at, if you want to share it with friends, colleagues, whatever, or share it with ministers and MPs, I think, as much as anything. This is a looming problem coming straight at us, and we need to do something about it, I think. Monday morning, we are launching the Smart Centers Index, the fourth one. Some interesting results there, so definitely check that out. But finally, Jeff, I really need to thank you. You've brought to my attention an area that I had kind of overlooked. It seems to be a bit of a dog's breakfast, not least with the delay, meaning that people are now in this attitude of why bother? If they've delayed once, will they delay again? And it's definitely an area that we need to straighten out. I'm afraid, as a devoted world trader, a former master of the world traders, my attitude would be to recognize the CE in Britain and see where the where the UK approved bodies go. But that's my view, and I'm not in that business. So I think if I was in the business, I'd probably take a different view. And you very clearly highlighted the challenges to everyone, and for that, I think all of us thank you for the effort that you put into this, for bringing this to our attention. And we wish you and the BMTA every success in unpicking this, because next Christmas I would like to be buying things from shelves. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Goodbye.
Take care.